All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up tonight for this Local Lives event in partnership with WFAE in an effort to open a dialogue between journalists and the communities they serve through storytelling. I'm SWATS, that's songwriting and tactical sounds, and I'll be opening up the segment with a music segment with some songs from my first solo album, Reclamation. Now, speaking of storytelling, there's a whole story behind Reclamation, how it started, how I started. It's kind of like my coming of age story, from coming up as a kid and then video games and talking about my mom and relationships and moving into the corporate world and getting married and having kids and all that stuff. So it's kind of a story about me. And hopefully it's something that a lot of people can relate to. Now, the title also has something of a meaning to storytelling. Now, reclamation means something, like reclaiming something that you've lost or holding on to something that you hold dear. Now, when I first started making music, it's with my band GameBreaxs, which I'm still with. Started back in 2014, 15, making music under that moniker, GameBreaxs. But you go online and you search for SWATs, and there wasn't much to find. Sure, you could find GameBreaxs, but I was basically invisible. Now, the guy that I rap with, Omega Sparks, he had already started to become a household name. He's been in a video game, has been plastered over a lot of stuff and really great stuff. So I needed to make sure that I could keep up. So I was like, all right, let me write a song. Let me get it out there in the Google space and make sure I can be found out there so I can live on my own as well. So created the first song on my first solo album called Play, which is what I'm going to do for you guys tonight. Did it, released it. It was awesome, sent it out, and then it went to somebody else's catalog. So what happened is I had been making music as GameBreaxs, and between the time that I started making music with GameBreaxs and then my solo album, someone else started releasing music under the name SWATs. So like it became this whole huge deal of me trying to reclaim, myself, my identity, So I had to go through some legal stuff. I had to go and make, this full album. This whole album is actually a response to that. So Reclamation is me reclaiming all of that stuff that I held dear and reclaiming my identity. So without further ado, I'd like to dive right into my first song from my first solo album, Play. Yeah. Yo, thank you for being here with me tonight. I just kind of want to say, hello, who am I? A digital kind of guy, never dreaded around me, just happy to be alive, yeah. This year, I'm repping for you and I disappeared. Switch gears and I'm taking you for a ride, yeah. Back in the day, it was checks beside a name. Checks for the lame, today it's checks to show the fame, yeah. May I remind you to never give up the fight of living dormant inside you. Tried to focus on the mind. I gotta play the game. Moved in from Philly to NC was really to raise me. A visit but never move back. Break beats, all the sucker MCs. We live in the 80s, tradition that's a throwback. Mom, please consider the token. Just trying to go in, I'm winning, you gotta know that. All the way from beginning to last inning, you're getting this what's in. All I know is that I pay to play the game. Money, I am being told. Money, I am being sold. Money, I am being told. Money, I am being sold. Yeah, learn a lesson. Pay attention, this is a SWAT's intervention. Once a consumer, now I can assume you're bobbing your head to my tribute to the music I used to play. Now I play to break the game. This is not a discussion. This is not a debate. Take a case of mistaken identity upon my namesake. I found an issue with competition that can't wait. Bring a resolution at any moment. The game breaks. Same's taking you 8 takes. Your brain quakes on it. There's lyricism, indecision. It ain't funny. It take money to make money. The same change you waste on it could be the change that you ain't started. Play the game. Moved in from Philly to NC was really to raise me. A visit but never moved back. Break beats, all all the sucker MCs, we live in the 80s, tradition that's a throwback. Mom, please consider the token, just trying to go in and winning, you gotta know that. All the way from beginning to last inning, you're getting this SWATS in. All of those that hate to play the game. Money, I am being so. 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 Yeah, learn a lesson, pay attention, this is a SWATS intervention. Once a consumer, now I can assume you're bobbing your head to my tribute to the music I used to pay, now I play to break the game. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was Play, first song from my first solo album. So needless to say, I'm getting my name out there. I've started making some music. I've reclaimed quite a bit of that. But I will move on to the second song. But before I do that, I just want to reintroduce myself. Again, I'm SWATS. Thank you for joining us. This is a localized event in partnership with WFAE in an effort to open up a dialogue between journalists and the communities they serve through storytelling. So started with my song Play. A lot of these songs are going to be from my first album, Reclamation. If you like what you're hearing, please follow me on Spotify. And please follow me on Instagram, SWATS_GBX. You can also find me on Google. I made an app for myself. It's called SWATS Go. Just Google SWATS Go. I appreciate it. So this next song is called On Your Mind. It's kind of a song for the brokenhearted, right? I'm so sad. No, I'm just kidding. It's more of a, it's not about a specific person, but it definitely speaks to past relationships that I've had, and hopefully people can relate to that moment when you have gotten out of relationship. Maybe it's a week later or a year later, and you're like, man, I wonder if this person has even ever thought of me again, at all. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but it's that space in between leaving a relationship where you're just like, man, this kind of sucks, but it's kind of good, but it kind of sucks. So anyhow, I would like for you guys to join me on Your Mind, my second song from my first solo album. On your mind. Yeah. You were down with a crowd to please, but your mind can make you anything you want to be. Divine, give it time, maybe space on an airline to breathe. Try to keep you closer than most, but now you trying to leave. Ridiculous, anomalous. Picture this, I'm a fiend, cracked up on a drama queen. Arguments start up, but then we pause so we don't cause a scene. Serious, what does all this mean? We used to greet the street lights, but now we hardly speak. I'm tripping off the past week ride. And I know we decided things gotta change, but the things that would keep us departed, sorry they gotta stay. I'm not sorry they got in the way, more like sorry you couldn't relate. Now I see you walking away, what can I say? Can we ride, can we die alone? Emptying thoughts of you when I finished right as I wrote it. And when I've given up on everything, you're standing right in front of me. Here we go again, what's gonna be? I'd like to know, yeah. If I'm on your mind, how might I know what you feel inside, yeah. I'd like to know, yeah. Is it me this time? I just wanna know if you really mind. On again and off again, I don't care who started it, long as you came to party and names remain anonymous. Wait, getting stuck in our past ways, who wanted this? Hearts intertwined, break every time we on that common sense. You're looking kinda tense, I can make it better, or we can kick it like capoeira, taking whatever things we discarded can't take the place of what remains if we part. It's a shame that we start and finish the same sentence. Just look at this, I told you I'm a mess. I hope your life make you happy with all kind of success. He gave you all that I wouldn't provide and made the time for romantic nights. I do the same, but it remains that I keep joking on my pride. Do or die alone, emptying thoughts of you when I brought up toxic emotions. Now that I've given up on everything, you're standing right in front of me. Dang, and there you go again, it's not gonna be me. I'd like to know, yeah. If I'm on your mind, how might I know what you feel inside, yeah. I'd like to know, yeah. Is it me this time? I just wanna know if you really mind. On your mind, baby. Thank you very much. That was On Your Mind. I promise you I am not that sad, but I definitely wanted to get that off my chest. So um, moving right along, I'm an 80s baby, right? Like born and raised in the 80s, love it, love the sights, the sounds, the smells. Everything was just full of angst and anxiety, and everything was just big and in your face. And this next song is actually about a show that is all about that segment of our history. So you guys have probably heard of Stranger Things. Big fan of the show. So this song is dedicated to Stranger Things. And what I did when I wrote this song is I wanted to give the listener the feeling of being chased by the unknown, or the feeling of anxiety, or not knowing what's standing right behind you, or not knowing what's going to happen next. So it's very, very fast paced, very staccato, and it's a quick hitter. But as a fan of the show, you know, season 3 came out and I dropped this song. So a lot of other fans of the show got to experience this one as well. So without further ado, I will dive right into Upside. Yeah. Yeah.
Where did you find me? 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 What did they find me? The one where they find me? What did they find me? Man, I'm hiding in the dark and there's something behind me. How did you find me? 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 How do they let's keep pushing? Anyway, the rotate the wheel. Never been afraid of a shadow. There's never been a shadow that kills. They said that a monster to meet us. I think about the time I Adidas. He bigger than a mountain going in. I really got a warn on my friends. Dustin, Mike, Lucas, how we get a bike through this? BMX, nice, who this? I'll be the next flight to the moon, ET for the win. Psychokinesis, but it's a horde Armageddon. So lines on to media, they getting 11:30. I'll admit it, I've been shivering. I'm thinking I'm gonna need all lights on in front of me all night, but they gonna be off. What about all these fog lights? You're pissing me off, Papa, we gonna be all fine. We'll make it a playtime in the daytime. Got a hand swoop, we're gonna make time. We're gonna take us and escape to my play. Gonna watch how I save lives. Taking it back when I'm making an attack, and I'm breaking it back with the nails of the tact. And I got a companion forever, I'm telling you, never gonna let me down. You feel me now? Yeah, where did you find me? Yeah, where did you find me? Where did you find me? Where did you find me? What do they want? This is the one that they want. What do they want? Man, I'm hiding in the dark and there's something behind me. How did you find me? Yeah, how did you find me? Yo, how did you shaking it back when I'm making it track and I'm breaking it back with the nails of the tact. And I got a companion forever, I'm telling you, never gonna let me down. You feel me? Let's go. Man, I'm hiding in the dark and there's something behind me. Yeah. Let's go.
All right. So thank you guys again for joining us. This is the Local Lives Events in partnership with WFAE in an effort to open up a dialogue between journalists and the community that they serve through storytelling. I am SWATS. If you like what you're hearing, please give me a follow on Spotify. Check me out on Instagram, SWATS_GBX. And check me out on Google for my app, SWATS Go. All right. So moving right along from this song, I just want to say I love you guys. I love each and every one of you guys. I am a local to the Charlotte area. Lived a lot of places in Charlotte, whether it be Huntersville, Concord, Charlotte, you know, Cornelius, etc. A lot of Charlotte and surroundings. So a lot of time here. And this next song is kind of a love letter to you, to this beautiful city that we have. And just to say that I appreciate you. You know, I've been raised by you. I've grown up here. A lot of my friends are you. And there's just so much that goes on here. And there's so much feeling in this town, man. We've got so much heart. And a lot of people don't get to see that, but I hope they're starting to see that these days. But this song is an ode to that. So it's kind of, you'll hear some street names and things like that. It talks about a couple of political things, some things that we've gone through. But the main piece of it is that, you know, we're stronger when we stand together. And these days, you know, if we don't stand together, we may not stand at all. So just wanted to give this song to you guys as a love letter. So let's rock it out with QC.
QC is unique, new leaders. QC,
Yeah.
QC is unique, new leaders. QC,
Yeah. Proud, loyal,
something like a nightly royal. QC run a midnight oil, living a life and it's got everything for you. Never debating independence, freedom driving the city, but better try on. We're gonna go straight to the boulevard, Harrison on the biggest Ford, we gotta ride on. Everybody says, Twin City, home in the new South. SWATS coming up, get the news out. You can feel it in your bones, got a new sound. When the music underground, shake a whole town. No LA, where they bust down. Come around here, call it uptown. Gotta clock in, you can wear brown. Episode alive till it shuts down. You cannot think it's alarming. Come around here with all kind of hate. You got the strength of an army. Our power equal to 98. Check the speed limit when I'm rolling, but there's no limit in the morning. 485 when I'm coming alive and I constantly live in the moment. She is coming in, unique, overhead, new leaders, running in, QC, yeah. You see us coming in, unique, overhead, new leaders, running in, QC, yeah. Charlotte, it's about the time that we gotta be thrown off. And if you on the block, then you can get this roll call. Concord, you ready? Huntersville, you ready? Cornelius, you ready? Davidson, is you ready? Heroes ain't hard to find, but can a hero be hard to define? Somebody crossing the line while somebody saving a life. 49 is strong. Might step to police and we might step to the government. There's heat round when I speak now. Wanna keep pounding them out. Mic check. Anybody in the city got a right check? Yo, working on it till I like it. I'm begging on a job that I might get. All set, no stress with a dope check. Chill with the boys. Call for the crib and a weekend toy. Fluent in lyricism, make some noise. Yeah, sprechen Sie Deutsch. You cannot think it's alarming. Come around here with all kind of hate. You got the strength of an army. Our power equal to 98. Check the speed limit when I'm rolling, but there's no limit in the morning. 485 when I'm coming alive and I constantly live in the moment. You see us coming in, unique, overhead, new leaders, running in, QC, yeah. You see us coming in, unique, overhead, new leaders, running in, QC, yeah. Charlotte, all about Charlotte. Charlotte, I love you. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for being here with us tonight. We are rolling into my next song, which is called Oxygen. Now, we all need a little bit of oxygen. This is dedicated to my two beautiful men, my two beautiful boys. I wrote this song, Oxygen, as a gift for them. If by any means or any circumstances that I am no longer in their lives, I wanted them to have something to remember me by. So they liked the song, they heard it, they dig it. I'm glad they like it. They can keep it forever. So yeah, this is my love letter to those boys, because it's kind of like as a human, when you become an adult, you evolve into a better version of yourself, and you unlock all this hidden potential that you may not have even known was there. So I'm going to dive into Oxygen. It's quite a bit more reserved and chilled. Now, funny fact, another story. I vowed that I would never sing this song in public because I didn't think I could get through it. So like, if I don't get through it, it's okay. We're good. So I'm going to try. We're going to get through it. Here goes Oxygen. In darkness, you're all that I see. Beside you, knowing what I be. Finding you're all that I need. Searching the air that I breathe. Never annoyed, hope you hear the sound of my voice. Boogie roll like a Royce, never giving up as a choice. It's daddy's biggest boy. Miles Morales coming for you. Danger will never destroy. The Rangers will never be foiled. Innocent emotion on you. To you, I'm forever loyal. Growing up faster than any weed that's pushing out the soil. I would do anything for you, no question that I'm committed. And if you got a minute, take you back to humble beginnings. Into daddy's little man, poo-poo daddy initial plan. Oh God, he's crying again. Now he's daddy's biggest fan. Bottling, baby, we coddling toddlers. Let me get on these bottles. How many diapers? I think it's infinity gauntlet. And if anything goes down and I'm taken away, and you're seeing me never hurt. If you're feeling alone, you can't get it together. May you always remember that familiar my toes. Watch the boys forever. In darkness, you're all that I see. Beside you, nowhere would I be. Finding you're all that I need. Searching the air that I breathe. Darkness, you're all that I see. Beside you, nowhere would I be. Finding you're all that I need. searching the air that I breathe. Yeah, better bow to the judge. Yeah. Better bow to the judge, looking like a mirror to me. Got a piece of my heart, baby, for a second coming. But I label them young queasy, cause everything comes easy. If ever they wanna turn up, I'm turning, they gonna get it, hey. Why is everybody growing up? Look at it flying, soon I'll be rolling up. Sit in the back of the whip, and eventually gonna be taking the wheel. I'll be elated, but I gotta make it, I know you be great at it. If anything goes down, and I'm taking away, and you're seeing me never. If you're feeling alone, you can't get it together. May you always remember that familiar motto, SWATS and boys forever. In darkness, you're all that I see. Beside you, nowhere would I be. Finding you're all that I need. Searching the air that I breathe. Darkness, you're all that I see. Beside you, nowhere would I be. Finding you're all that I need. Searching the air that I breathe.
I made it. I made it through the song. That was Oxygen. Thank you so much. Again, love letter to my kids. That song will always hold a special place in my heart. Again, if you guys are loving what you're hearing, my name is SWATS. Please follow me on Spotify. You can check me out on Instagram, SWATS_GBX, or Google me. Look for the SWATS Go app. Again, this is the local live show in partnership with WFAE, opening a dialogue between journalists and the communities they serve through storytelling. Now, to wrap up my show, and thank you guys for hanging with me this long, is probably my most popular song to date. It is called Opaque. Now, this particular song carries a lot of meaning to me as well. I did it a little bit differently, all right? So with this particular song, I wrote it with dancers and movers in mind. I wanted something that they could vibe to and anybody could vibe to, just pick it up and just listen and rock out with it. So I wrote this song, pulled back on the lyrics and the lyricism so that the beat could fly a little bit higher and live on its own. So I did that. And I found one of my favorite movers out there, one of my favorite dancers. His name is Nonstop. He's been in So You Think You Can Dance, World of Dance. He's very popular on the web, Instagram, YouTube, etc., doing very well. And he's been a favorite of mine for a very long time. So shot my shot. I said, hey, I wrote this song. I would love for you to do a quick Instagram video to it. He listened to it. He was like, yo, this is a bop. And I was like, all right, great, cool. So send it over to him. He listened to it. He was like, look, can we do a full music video for this? I would love to do the full music video. And I was like, bro, okay. I'm trying to play it cool, but I'm like, sure, yeah, whatever. No, but we did it. And we released it, and it's done really well. It's got like over hundreds of thousands of views now, and people are loving it. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to the official music video for Opaque featuring Nonstop.
Don't ask, don't play, you in it, don't wait, let's ride, no breaks, no lie, opaque, don't ask, don't play, you in it, don't wait, let's ride, no breaks, no lie, opaque. You don't even have to ask me, if you in it, we can just be free, take it easy, got no place to be, got me feeling like me. If you really we can just be free. Take it easy, got no place to be. Got me feeling like don't wait, you wait, don't wait, that's right, don't wait.
And that was Opaque. I love that song so much. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. And that brings us to the final piece of my set. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for enjoying my music, rocking with me, enjoying the songs from Reclamation and this new song that I have for an upcoming album. Again, if you like what you see, my name is SWATS. Follow me on social media. You can follow me on Spotify, SWATS_GBX on Instagram, or check out my app, SWATS Go. We are actually going to start the rest of the show, but we're first going to kick it off with a 1 to 2 minute poll. If you guys could participate in that, check it out. We would really, really appreciate it. And then the rest of the show is going to begin after that. So thank you so much for spending your evening with me. I appreciate you. Peace.
Hello, everyone. My name's Tay Glass. First off, thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's really an incredible honor to be here with all, I think like 140 of you. Yeah, so welcome to this Local Lives show with WFAE. If you've spent basically any time in a car almost anywhere in and around Charlotte, you've almost definitely heard WFAE in some capacity, whether it's their breaking news updates, their incredible investigative work, their excellent music, shows like Amplifier or Charlotte Talks with Mike Collins. But then what the heck is Local Lives? Well, we're a small team of journalists and storytellers, and our goal is to, quote, strengthen the relationship between journalists and communities they serve through storytelling. So we want to peel back the curtain on how the news is made, and we want to bring you, the community, closer together to your local journalists who, and this may be a surprise to some, are important and dedicated members of your community. Now, obviously, we'd love to do this in person, but here we are on Zoom. So I just wanted to go over a little bit of Zoom etiquette. First off, please say hello and where you're watching from in the chat on the side. This is an interactive show, so honestly, feel free to chime in anytime. And going along with that don't be shy thing, please turn your cameras on. We've got some amazing stories to share with you tonight, and seeing you laugh and smile and nod in the chat really helps the storytellers, but it also helps us all feel like we're in the same place. Also, when we introduce a storyteller and after they finish, you're going to see a little button that pops up that asks you to unmute yourself, and you should absolutely click it. Just because you're watching from home doesn't mean that you shouldn't give our performers a huge round of applause. In fact, because you're at home, you can kind of be as loud as you want to, right? So let's practice that now and give it up for our opening act, SWATS.
Video together for dinner.
Woohoo!
Yay!
Right.
Yes,
Storytelling thing that Tommy Tomlinson is a part of.
I'll just tap on the bottom here.
Yes, so his Instagram and socials were popping up in the chat. Absolutely check SWATS out. And now I'm going to give it over to my extremely talented co-host. You've probably found your favorite local artist, people like SWATS, from her award-winning podcast, Amplifier. It's a pleasure to share the virtual stage with Joni Deutsch.
Hi, Tay, and hello, everyone. Thank you for spending your Tuesday night with us. You could be easily eating dinner, and maybe you are while you're watching. Regardless, we're happy that you're here. And also a very special thank you to WFAE's members and donors who have made a contribution in any amount on WFAE.org to support our journalism, our podcasts like Amplifier and She Says and SouthBound, and also virtual events like tonight. Needless to say, it's been a hectic year in news, and by year, I mean month, and by month, I mean week and also hour, which is why we are more than happy to take a breather, slow it down, share with you the side of news that we're not often able to show on air within a minute's time. The humans behind the sound bites, the emotions behind the headlines. As you may have heard, the theme of tonight's event is outsiders. And over the next hour, we're going to hear a wide range of Charlotte area stories and storytellers. Stories of undocumented people who have staked their livelihood for better healthcare. Stories about finding your place in college. Stories about life-changing surgeries and surprising career moves. And to get us started, we're going to hear from one of my colleagues at WFAE, one of our resident audio storytellers. He is an award-winning writer. You may have picked up his latest book, The Elephant in the Room, which was named one of the best books in 2019 by NPR. You may also know him for being the host of the acclaimed SouthBound podcast, where he gets to the heart of being a Southerner by having heart-to-hearts with a wide range of folks, from Anthony Hamilton to Brooklyn Decker and beyond. So it is my honor and pleasure to introduce my colleague and our first storyteller of the night, Mr. Tommy Tomlinson.
Hey, Tommy.
The first one of the night, and I was already muted. Evening to everybody, and thanks for that welcome. It's great to be here. Thanks for sharing this time with us. If you've heard me before, you may be used to this voice, but if you haven't heard me before, your first question might be, does that dude have a cold? I don't. I feel fine, I feel great, but the story behind this voice that I've had for about half my life now, is the story I'd like to tell tonight. I used to have a much different voice. It had more of a Southern accent. I grew up in South Georgia, and my family grew up in the country, and it had a little bit more of a country edge to it. It was deeper and richer, but it also had more range. You know, when a Prince song would come on the radio, I used to try to get to the falsetto, and even though if I didn't hit the right note, I might have been in the general area once or twice. So I had this voice and I had this job where I used my voice all the time, and I didn't think much about it until one day when I was 29, and I started feeling what I thought was laryngitis. Something didn't go away. And went to a couple of doctors. Ear, nose, and throat doctor said, I think it's just a little polyp in your throat. We'll take it out, no big deal. You're going about your life. He took it out and called me back in a few days later to tell me I had something called squamous cell carcinoma, or throat cancer. I had surgery for that throat cancer, and it removed about 40% of my voice box. And so this 60%, these muscles started straining to do the job that a lot more muscles used to do, is what I ended up being left with. I had to sort of relearn to talk in some ways. I had to take speech therapy for months. And when I went back to work at the newspaper where I was working, they had to give me a special phone with like a volume knob that was basically cranked up to 11. And still often when I was on the phone, or even when I was face to face with somebody, people couldn't hear me, they couldn't understand me. And I started to worry about what my life and my career would be like if I didn't have a voice. I remembered sitting in the hospital for 17 days, waiting to find out if I'd have any voice at all. And when I had a little bit of a voice, I was so happy when it happened. But now I was faced with the fact that maybe it wasn't good enough to do what I needed to do. My voice needs a lot of watering, by the way. It's like a weird kind of house plant thing. So as I went out and started doing reporting again, I realized pretty quickly that a lot of the stuff I used to do, I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't be in a bar room where I maybe track down some source and try to yell across a table to have a conversation. I couldn't go to a basketball game or a football game and be in the scrum in the locker room afterwards, trying to talk over the din of the voices and the music. I covered concerts for a while. I was a music writer, and I couldn't talk to anybody during the concert. Of course, most people can't talk to most anybody during a concert, but I couldn't even begin to shout over the Grateful Dead or Janet Jackson playing at full volume. So I realized I'd have to try to do some different things. So when I went to these concerts or ball games or things like that, I would find moments when I could pull people aside and talk to them there. Out of the din of the show, whatever was going on, out of the river of people who might be coming in and out of a concert or a game or something. And I realized something fairly soon, that in some ways, my voice had become a feature instead of a bug. Because once I started talking to people in those quieter surroundings, once I started not having to shout, not being able to shout, we had better conversations. If you think about it, even when you're in a loud place with somebody you really like, it's hard to have a great conversation with them. You're basically just trying to get out whatever words you have to keep the conversation going. But in my case, these conversations became deeper and better and more meaningful. And I got better material for my stories. I felt like I started to understand people better that I was talking to, even if it was just for a brief time. And so I continued my career as a newspaper writer and then as a magazine writer for many years. And the more I did this and the longer the stories were that I did, the more I would think to myself, man, it would be so great if we could just like publish the transcripts of some of these conversations that I've been having. Because some of them would last, an hour or more. And there was just great stuff in there, and I wouldn't use it all for my story. And then one day I had sort of this light bulb moment that in some ways, that's kind of what a podcast is. It's, at least some podcasts are just two people talking to each other and having a conversation with an audience listening in. And so I started thinking about doing a podcast. I even talked to Joe O'Connor, who runs the station, WFAE. And I was confident that I had a good idea for a podcast. It was called SouthBound, to talk to interesting Southerners from all walks of life. But I was very self-conscious and very self-defeating, I guess, about my voice. I didn't think my voice would be good enough for what I wanted to do. Not only was I asking to do a podcast, but I was asking to do it on NPR, which has some of the most resonant, mellifluous voices in all of broadcasting. What was I doing, even trying to be with those voices? But Joe said, let's give it a shot. And so a few years ago, we started SouthBound. And as I started doing it, I started having conversations with people for the air. I started to figure out that there was another way that my voice was a feature and not a bug, that it somehow added to the intimacy of the conversation. And audio is all about intimacy. It's the most personal type of media. When you're listening to the radio or even a podcast in your headphones, it feels like the person you're talking to, you're just talking to them and nobody else. And so I realized that that voice maybe actually helped draw people in rather than driving people away. And then as I did it a little bit more, I figured out a third way that my voice could be a feature and not a bug. And that was that I had some experience, I guess, in being an outsider. You know, this whole event tonight is about being an outsider and what that's like. And in some ways in journalism, you're an outsider and an insider at the same time. You know, I've been to the Super Bowl in the press box. I've been with people at the happiest and saddest moments of their lives. I've gone to the Central Prison in Raleigh and witnessed an execution. But at the same time, even in the middle of those moments, as a journalist, you're a recorder, an observer, a watch person. You're on the outside too. And as I started having these conversations with people, I started thinking about that I might have a little bit in common with other people who feel like they're outsiders because of their race or their gender or their sexuality or whatever it was. I'm not saying by any means that I, as a straight white guy, would immediately know what it's like to be a Black woman who's gay. But I thought maybe my voice and that little bit of outsiderness that I felt along the way would at least give us a little patch of common ground. I know a lot of you feel like you're on the outside too. We all have this, many of us have this thing called imposter syndrome, where we feel like, you know, one day somebody's going to tap us on the shoulder and say, you don't belong here. You're not part of this. You need to go away. I've felt that too many times. I wrote a whole book about being overweight and what it's like to feel on the outside, looking in at the rest of the world that's fitter and trimmer and seemingly having a better time. But I will tell you that having this voice has taught me a lot about the value of sometimes being an outsider. Back 28 years ago now, when my doctor told me that I had cancer, he was trying to describe how unusual it was that I got this cancer at 29. Nobody gets it when they're that age. He said, you know, every time you talk about a disease, you talk about 60% of the people get it for this reason, 20% of the people get it for this reason, 10% of the people get it for some other reason, and always down at the bottom, there's a category that we just have to call other. And he looked at me and he said, "You're other." And I was crushed in that moment to be other. But now, after a long time of being other and using it in ways that I never anticipated, I've begun to think that maybe other is not a bad place to be.
That was beautiful. Wow.
That was great.
Yeah.
What?
Wow. Wow.
No, I'm talking to the podcast. Talking to the show.
Thank you so much, Tommy. I think I'm not alone here in saying that your voice is captivating, and I'm so glad that you got into radio and podcasting. If you haven't heard it yet, you should absolutely check out Tommy's podcast, SouthBound, which you can find at wfae.org/southbound or wherever you find podcasts. So yeah, we asked the audience to share some stories about you, about feeling like an outsider and what you did to try to get in. So I'm going to share a couple of those stories now. So this person said, "When I moved to America from a different country, I got made fun of for not knowing how to play American football. I was 10 years old. I was embarrassed of my lack of knowledge of American culture and even more so of my accent. I made up for it by being a class clown, an excellent speller, and befriending everyone. Still horrible at football." I am not particularly gifted at sports, so I can definitely relate to that. And then the next story I have is very short, but sort of poignant in the era of Zoom and Zoom meetings. I think we dropped the link to tell these stories into the waiting room before we let everybody in for the event tonight. And so this person's story about being an outsider is, quote, "I can't get into the meeting." So without much further ado, I want to introduce our next storyteller, Diashanna Logan. Diashanna is an incredible spoken word artist. She's also just like a breath of fresh air. Every time we chat, I'm left smiling, and I think you will be too when you hear her story. So without giving too much away, let's hear it for Diashanna Logan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I'm just gonna jump right into the story. So it was the fall of 2017, and me and my sisters were getting ready for the biggest step show of the year. And for those of you who don't know what step is, it is basically making music with your hands and feet, using your entire body to make music prominent in a lot of cultures. But yeah, we're getting ready for the biggest show of the year. We had spent endless hours practicing, endless weeks practicing, and today was the day. I got up that morning, I was excited, I got dressed, I ate breakfast, I went downstairs getting ready to start my day, and my car was gone. I looked around the parking lot, and I was just like, I had no idea where my car was or what was going on. I started trying to make some phone calls, couldn't figure it out. And then I thought back and I was like, I parked illegally. And not only that, my uniform and one of my sister's uniforms was in the trunk of my car. So I started trying to call the tow truck company and there was no answer. They were closed for the weekend and I knew I was screwed. So up until that point, I had faced a lot of trials and tribulations. I had decided to join the best sorority in the world, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, a year prior. And joining a sorority is like picking up a night class. So I was a full-time student. I was working as a general manager full time. And then I had decided to pick up this night class. And it was all cool at first. I was getting to know my sisters. I was learning the history. And then it kind of got to the point where I started losing sleep. You know, like I had to work. I couldn't go to bed at night because I had to be there with them. And it became a lot on me, and I started to change. My friends didn't like me very much anymore. When I would go to work in the morning, my team would, you know, drop their head and not want to talk to me because they didn't want to set me off. I just became like this angry person. I was irritable. It was just tough. And I wasn't fun to be around. And to add on to all of that, I used to have to try to find a babysitter to get to where I was going and do what I had to do at night. Yes, I'm a full-time single mom. And at the time, my son was 9, and he would go everywhere with me. He would sit in the dining room some nights while I worked. He would come to class with me. He was the kid on campus. So I was used to taking him everywhere. But with me trying to join a sorority, that was one place that he couldn't go. He couldn't come to practices at night. It just was kind of one of those things that he couldn't be a part of. So I remember distinctly one time I went home and my mom had this big, beautiful house and she would go to bed early. And I walked upstairs and I was like, "Hey, Mom, you mind babysitting for me tonight?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure. Where are you going?" And I was like, "Ooh, can't tell you." Because the culture of joining a sorority or being a part of the fun in it is not telling people what you're doing, not allowing people to know what you're becoming a part of. And then you have this big reveal at the end. And she was like, "Well, cool. Like, you can't tell me where you're going, then I can't babysit." And I'm stubborn, she's stubborn. And this went on for a while. So I just got upset and I was like, "Fine, if you don't want to babysit, I'll figure it out." And we had this argument over the period of weeks. And sometimes I would even hoax my son into asking her because I knew she couldn't tell him no. So eventually, you know, she came to me and she said, "Look, I'd much rather watch them than anybody else watch them." And I think that was just, you know, her understanding. I think she kind of knew what was going on and what I was trying to do. So she kind of worked with me. And here we are, the day of the step show now, and I don't have a car. I don't have my costume. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I called up a friend. My friend got me to the store and we were able to make it to our final practice. And my step coach, he gave us a speech somewhere along the lines of, "Hey guys, this is it. We've practiced. This is the night that we've all been waiting for. You guys are gonna do a great job." All that good stuff. And then, by the way, we're going first. So we got out there and I stood there behind the stage and the gym is loud, it's packed, the lights are going off and on and you can hear people screaming. And the one thing I'm thinking in my head is, just don't mess this up. Because I'm a poet. I can get on stage and talk until the end of time, but I had no rhythm. I am not a dancer. So ironically, there's one part in the show where I was not in it at all because I couldn't get it right in practice. So I was nervous and that was the only thing that I could think, like, just please don't mess this up. So we went out there and we gave it all that we had. I mean, we left it all on stage. We set the tone for the other 5 or 6 teams that were after us. And it was an amazing night. So we watched all of the other teams go. And when they called out the winner, we had won. And it was pretty awesome. Like that was what we had worked so hard for. We went out that night and we partied super hard, had a great time. And when I got home that night, the house was quiet and it was dark because my mom, like I said, she goes to bed early. And I turned the lights on and she had left me some balloons and some flowers and a card, just letting me know that she was proud of me and that she had supported me the entire time. I think she knew what I was doing and why I was leaving, because she had been to college before. And the biggest thing was she told me, like, I'm proud of you for being able to accomplish something that I wasn't able to do in undergrad. And I think that that was the most awesome part about it. You know, she really stuck by me even when I felt like she wasn't. And I thought that was my fairy tale ending. You know, I had worked hard, I had lost sleep, I had done it all, and I thought that was it. But the most interesting part was a couple of days later, I logged on to Facebook and I look, and somehow I got lost during intermission, but my son had stolen the show. Like, he was there, crowd cheering him on. He was the life of the party that night. And the time that I spent trying to join the sorority and he wasn't able to be there while I was out flourishing on my own, or so I thought, flourishing on my own, he was right there flourishing along with me. So we're gonna show you a little clip of him stealing the show during the intermission. So yeah, that's just him. That's his personality. He's the life of the party everywhere he goes. You know, that was 3 years ago and he hadn't changed a bit. So I really appreciate you all listening in tonight, and thank you for joining us.
Woo!
Yay! Good stuff.
Thank you, Diashanna. And again, that's Diashanna Logan, who you can find on her individual. I love when I hear dogs barking in the background, and they're not mine. It shows that my dog can be silent for 2 seconds. And then my dog's going to start barking in a minute or two. Just you wait. Thank you again to Diashanna, who just shared, just a heartful story of herself and her family. Of course, you can follow her individual work on Instagram. You can find her pinnacle_the_poet. That's in the Zoom chat if you want to find that link directly. And she's also with a spoken word collective in the region called Black Ink Monks. You can follow their collective work, again, on social media as well. Now, folks, we are halfway through the night. I know time flies when we're in the middle of a pandemic. Same old, but we want to keep you on your toes tonight, right? So we're switching up the format with our next storyteller and our next story. It comes in the form of a conversation with Laura Brache, who splits her time as a Report for America reporter between WFAE, Charlotte's NPR News Source, and La Noticia, the Spanish language newspaper here in Charlotte. Laura's stories on immigration and COVID-19's impact on the Latino community have been adapted to radio, to digital, to print, and even a locally designed graphic novel, which we're going to share in the chat, don't you worry. But right now, we're happy to see her story translated through a virtual event right here, right now. So please give it up for a special conversation between Tay Glass and Laura Brache.
Eso, Laura.
Okay, so this last year has been quite difficult for a lot of us, but especially for Black and Brown folks who are disproportionately affected by COVID, in addition to a number of other things. So Laura covered this massive topic through one family, the Chagoyans. Now it's a complicated story that you should absolutely listen to, but to sum it up quickly, the Chagoyans lost a member of their family, Juan, and the hospital barely communicated with them, omitting like huge details, like that he was paralyzed from an unrelated stroke. So Laura, first off, thank you so much for being here tonight. And then I wonder if you could tell me about the moment you decided you had to dig deeper into this story.
Yeah, thanks for having me tonight. So it all started when my colleague at La Noticia, he did a quick press release type of story about Juan's death. And later on, he sent me his sister Anna's number saying that she had more to share. And I first spoke to Anna the morning of July 24th last year, and it was a Friday. Anna had finished watching Juan's funeral from her own living room, and it was a Facebook Live funeral, which is hard to believe. And she just finished watching it, minutes before I spoke to her. And I just very distinctly remember Anna's language during the interview, and she kept using words like quiero decirle a la gente, which means I want people to know. And por medio de esta entrevista, my goal speaking with you in this interview. And she knew the power with these words that she was using. I could understand that she knew the power I wield as a journalist, as a member of the media. And it was like I was a living megaphone, and that through me, the world would know what led to Juan's untimely death and the longstanding inequities of Black and Brown folks that this pandemic has brought to the forefront.
Yeah, thank you. And so zooming in on the Chagoyan family, 8 out of 10 people living in their household tested positive for COVID. And you decided to go into their home in order to report this story. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that decision and why it was important to you.
Yeah, the Chagoyans had a stay-at-home order from Cabarrus County where they live, and it was lifted towards the middle of August. And by then, I just felt the need that after weeks of phone and FaceTime and Zoom interviews, all electronic, I had to do a final interview in their element before we published the series. And honestly, I'm just really, really glad I did. I am a member of the Latinx community, and there are so many things that are just kind of really hard to explain, like the warmth and the tight-knit family bonds. You can't just, you have to show it. There's just an element of that it's hard to just explain with words. And also, the other side of it was that this could have been my own family. My parents are both naturalized citizens, but my family is from a low-income background, and my dad is high risk and disabled, and my mom doesn't have insurance, which also puts her at risk. So really, I just felt that it was only fair to capture the Chagoyans in their element. And, for an hour, they just kind of really got to let me know who Juan was. They really kind of brought him back to life in a way. They showed me videos of when he was alive playing with his niece's kids. And at one point it started raining, and Juan's mom asked if we could go inside because she needed to sit and she was tired. That was an alarm that went off in my mind, that puts me in danger. But I did, and I did go inside, and it was like walking into a family member's house, really. And I had, my WFAE mask, I brought my disinfectant wipes, I had my boom mic, I took as many precautions as possible. But in the end, it was a risk I needed to take. And, our WFAE leaders are so awesome at telling us that no story is worth the risk or your safety or life. But to me, the Chagoyan story was definitely worth that risk.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough, right? Because as a journalist, you need to get close, but in the pandemic, we need to stay like 6 feet away. And you mentioned something there that I want to hone in on. You talked about risk, and I wonder if you could talk about the risk that the Chagoyans took.
Yeah, so I think, needless to say, the Chagoyans were taking a huge risk because they are unauthorized immigrants in the country. And still, regardless of that, they were so willing to give me full access to their story, their personal information. You name it, names, their address, hundreds and hundreds of pages of Juan's medical records. And, in the end, all of this was going to go to air, to, print, to online, now a graphic novel. So it exposed their legal status. And in the worst case scenario, any of them became, more vulnerable to being detained for entering the country illegally. As simple as that. But, they thought that telling their story Juan's story was just so much more important, and that anyone listening or reading would understand the inequities, that existed. And just something important to point out at that time, when I did the interview, Latinos made up 37% of all COVID-19 cases in North Carolina, but they are only 9% of the state's population. So basically, this disease was really serious, and the family just really wanted people to know from their perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched upon this a little bit, but you were taking risks, they were taking risks. And I think one risk that kind of goes unseen, another sort of layer here, is the mental health risks that you, as a reporter, take when you're covering traumatic events like this. And I wonder if you could talk about how this story affected you.
Yeah, my colleagues who are here, my editors who are here, my supervisors, WFAE leaders, how strenuous this story was. And during the entire process, I was just really overwhelmed, and it showed. This story in the end, I can confidently say it took a toll on me. A lot of nights I couldn't sleep, and it wasn't just the technical stuff or the fact that this was a story for work, that I wanted it to be good. It was more that I was constantly catching myself, going through little details about the case itself. Why weren't there any Spanish speaking interpreters for this family? Why was there, only one phone conversation in the entire medical record? Why was there only one phone conversation recorded? And why did the Chagoyans not know that Juan was never going to be the same after, if he had the opportunity to live this and get out of the hospital? Needless to say, I had to restart therapy. I do have a history of mental health and depression. I'm very open about it. And it got so bad that I did have to go back to the doctor and try to up my medication to help. But this is something that happens to a lot of journalists, and I've spoken to, I have friends in the industry who, this also happens to. We really do care about the people and the stories that we tell.
Yeah, and how much you care is evident. So last question for you. What is their status now? What's going on with the Chagoyans?
Yeah, so the Chagoyans' attorney sent an initial claim to the hospital system involved with the allegations that the family was making. And so the next step is for the hospital system to review and investigate their claim, and then the attorney can finish that final complaint. So, it's kind of all, it's a waiting game really, but, we'll see. We'll be following, of course.
Yeah, like a lot of things in the pandemic, it's up in the air. So Laura, thank you so much for being here tonight. Also, I want to preview something that's happening later in the evening. We're going to have breakout rooms where you can chat with other community members and storytellers like Laura. So you should absolutely stick around. We are running a little bit behind schedule. So if you have to leave early, I understand that and I apologize. But in the meantime, let's give it up for Laura Brache.
Thank you.
Woo! Yeah, Laura.
Love it, Laura. Love it.
Okay.
Well, I love the dog action here. Of course, with Laura's work, you can hear more and see more of her original reporting at both of the places that she works with through Report for America. That is WFAE.org. And you can also find her work at laneticia.com. So folks, earlier in the night, you heard Tay sharing some audience stories around the theme of outsiders. So we're going to share two more that have come from our audience tonight. This one I'm about to share, one could say, is a little bit more of a literal interpretation of being outside. As they put it, after coming home from a party in the dead of winter, I was locked out of my house. My parents had already gone to bed and there was no way in. I tried to break in through a window, but was only able to make it into the garage. I slept 6 hours in my mom's Land Cruiser. The next morning when I came around back, my parents asked me why I was already dressed for the day. So relatable story from one of our attendees. And here's one more. I lived in Seattle for 6 years. Seattle's famous for the Seattle freeze. people are very insular and pursue a lot of individual activities. It seemed like for the first 6 months, I was living with a box around me. No one seemed to care that I was new and looking to build a community. I started walking a trail a lot, wearing a University of Michigan hoodie from where I came from, and fellow Michiganders came out of the woodwork. I met so many lifelong friends, and with those friends, we chipped away at that freeze and made some amazing local friends as well. So 2 very different takes on our Outsiders theme from 2 of our attendees tonight. And we're going to hear another one right now. Our next storyteller is a mensch of a Charlotte musician who I've had the pleasure of knowing through my work with WFAE's Amplifier Music podcast. Kahn could easily share any number of stories from his more than 50 years as a civil rights, union, and community organizer, not to mention as a singer and songwriter. Tonight, Cy is going to take us back to the late 1970s, both through story and through song. So let's give a very warm welcome to Mr. Cy Kahn.
Please. Woo! It went away. Thank you, Rosie.
How extraordinary to be here tonight. How extraordinary to be here tonight with all of you. I was stunned by the courage, the commitment, just the sheer grace of the last story. But I would say that about everyone tonight, of SWATS, of Tommy, of Diashanna, of Laura. You know, people sometimes say to me, what are you doing in Charlotte, North Carolina? This is why I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is a beloved community. And there's so many good people who make it up. So many people here that you can count on in so many ways. My Schwester in spirit, Joni, one of the great storytellers of all time, Tommy, and the amazing gang at WFAE, a community station, a station that has courage, that has commitment, it has a heck of a lot of skill. So, yeah, you don't have to live in Charlotte to listen to WFAE. But I didn't always live in Charlotte. I've been here for, close to 45 years. But before that, I lived in Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. Now, the headwaters of the Roanoke River spring out of the ground in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. The water flows swiftly through gorges, over waterfalls, slowing past the city of Roanoke, headed towards the Atlantic Ocean. Shortly after the Roanoke River rolls into North Carolina, it crosses the fall line, dropping swiftly through a series of rapids, regaining speed and momentum as it flows. It was because of the awesome water power that 7 cotton mills were built in the town of Roanoke Rapids in the early 1900s. Flowing through turbines underneath the mill, transferred into the mills themselves by a series of belts and pulleys. The river powered not only the carding machines, the spinning frames, the looms, but the lives of what became over 3,000 mill hands. Lewis Harrell was one of those mill hands. He worked in the river mill, in the card room, the dustiest, dirtiest part of the mill. By the mid-1970s, Lewis was already suffering from brown lung, a breathing disease caused by chemicals in the Brache, the hard part of the cotton plant that holds up the white boll. Now, in the mid-1970s, I moved from North Georgia to Roanoke Rapids as an organizer with the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union. Right before that, while still living in North Georgia, I had been working in Harlan County, Kentucky, long known as Bloody Harlan, as an organizer for the United Mine Workers Union. So from working with coal miners, I already knew about black lung, the deadly disease that was disabling and killing so many coal miners, robbing them of their breath until they had to sleep sitting up, getting worse each day that they worked underground until they could no longer make it through the week and had to quit coal mining forever. Brown lung was different. For cotton mill workers, the challenge was not getting to the end of the week, but making it through Monday. When they went into the mill that morning, they told me it was like a truck had run into their chest. The chemicals in the dust, making it almost impossible to breathe. Eventually, the day came when they simply couldn't catch enough breath to tend their machine, their carding machine, their spinning frame, their loom, even for an hour. And they had to come out of the mill forever. Lewis Harrell was one of our Union and Carolina Brown Lung Association stalwarts. His passion for the Union went back all the way to 1934 and the general strike in textiles, the largest single industry strike in this country up until that time. Over 400,000 mill hands walking off the job all over the country. Lucy Taylor was another Brown Lung Association leader. One day when she was almost disabled by the disease but still working, her loom caught fire. Unable to breathe in the smoke, she went to the door to catch a breath of air. Her supervisor saw her. He shouted, "Get back to work and put out the fire." He paused, then said, "If I have to buy a new loom, it's going to cost me $20,000. If I need someone to take your place, I just need to go to the door and whistle." As a young worker, Lucy had been part of the 1934 general strike. She walked on a picket line that stretched all the way around the Rosemary Mill. I drove it off one day and it was over a mile. The mill owners called the strikers lintheads and trash, but they were determined. They were strong. They were proud. About 11 each night, I'd go down to the river mill to meet and talk with the workers who were getting ready to start what was technically known as third shift, but what we all called midnight shift, graveyard shift, hoot owl shift. Lewis worked second shift, swing shift, starting at 4 in the afternoon, so at midnight, as the other workers were going into the mill to start the hoot owl shift, he would emerge from the mill covered head to foot with cotton dust, strands of cotton that shined almost silver in the glare of the arc lights that lit up the mill yard. He stopped to talk with me for a minute before he headed home to sleep. The talking continued on Lewis's front porch after Brown Lung forced him out of the mill. We'd sit on his porch swing talking about hard times in the mill, about the long fight to clean up the dust, about going with other members of the Brown Lung Association to confront the State Workers' Compensation Board to try to get compensation for those disabled by the disease. We remember those nights when the striped bass came up the Road Oak River to spawn. Hundreds of us sitting with our picnic baskets and our 6-packs of beer, watching for when the water roiled as the fish started fighting, as the euphemism went, the teenage couples with their arms around their immersed in wonder and expectation. We'd hear the high-powered speedboats revving up their outboard motors, racing each other to that spot, someone holding a long handled net leaning far out over the bow, hoping to scoop up the two aquatic lovers, then racing to shore to deliver the unlucky couple to the state hatchery for the cash award. Then one day, the docking stopped. I was one of the 6 pallbearers who carried Lewis Harrow's coffin to his grave. I wrote a song for Lewis called "I'm Going to Go to Work on Monday One More Time." I sang it for years in his honor and memory. I still sing it for him. But these days, I also sing it for you. For every one of you who has to go to work on Monday, for all of you who wish you had a job to go to. I sing it for your courage and determination. In the face of what you confront on the job, the hazards to your health and safety, the sexual harassment and violence, the racism, the fear of immigration raids, the desperate combination of low wages and no benefits, the discrimination because of who you are, where you came from, who you love. May we always, always be able to take pride in our work, whatever that work is. May we have the courage at work to defend our sisters and brothers when they are at risk. May we go to our jobs determined to fight back, not just individually, but together through our unions and through organizations like the Carolina Brownling Association that work and fight for justice on and off the job. May we all go to work on Monday and every day imbued with Lewis Harrow's gentle fighting spirit. I did my part in World War II, got wounded for the nation. Now my lungs are all shot down, there ain't no compensation. I'm gonna go to work on Monday one more time. The last time I went near my job, I thought my lungs were broken. Chest bound down like iron bands. I couldn't breathe for choking. I'm gonna go to work on Monday one more time. The politicians in this state are nothing short of rotten. They buy us off with fancy words and they sell us out to cotton. I'm gonna go to work on Monday one more time. The doctor says both lungs are gone. There ain't no way to shake it. But living like some used up thing is just this sort of dying. I'm gonna go to work on Monday one more time. Sitting on my front porch swing, I'm like someone forgotten. Head all filled with angry thoughts and lungs filled up with cotton. I'm gonna go to work on Monday one more time. I'm gonna go to work on Monday one more time, one more time. I'm gonna go to work on Monday one more time.
Woo!
Now.
Allison.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very well.
All right, folks. Well, Thank you, Sai. It was such a pleasure to work with Sai. I'm afraid, however, we've got to end the show and we've got to go to work on Wednesday one more time. So we've made it to the end, but there's still more where this came from. Before you go, we have another one of those surveys for you to do. If it looks similar to the last one, it's because it's actually exactly the same. These shows are made possible by a generous grant from the Brown Institute for Media Innovation, and these surveys are our way of backing up what we're trying to do here. So we'll launch that poll, then I'll be back, and then we'll go to breakout rooms. So let's launch that poll. Good. So thank you so much again for coming tonight, and big thanks to our incredible storytellers. Thank you to Jennifer, Judon, and all of the fabulous folks at WFAE. Also, big shout out to my colleagues at Local Lives, McCardle, Lauren, Carissa, Allie, Elson, and Nico. And of course, thank you goes out to our partner, Report for America.
And also a big thanks to Tay for being co-host, our non-Charlottean tonight and co-hosting this event. Needless to say, this event would also not be possible without the stories and the support of our community and our audience. So you can make a donation in any amount if you want to support WFAE storytellers, our reporters, our podcasts, our virtual events, and beyond. Any amount is helpful and appreciated. You can make that donation at WFAE.org. For those that need to head out, by all means, we respect your Tuesday night time. We understand you have a busy day ahead of you tomorrow. Feel free to log out of Zoom. We hope to see you sometime soon. But for those that do want to stay and to mingle with our storytellers tonight, we encourage you to stay here. We're going to open up the breakout rooms in just a minute so that you can chat with our storytellers further. Stay with us, click that little button that will pop up on your screen to join the breakout room. And as a prompt, as an icebreaker of sorts, we'd like to know whether you feel local media are meeting your needs and your information and news needs. Why or why not? What more would you recommend that they look into to improve and grow? So again, we're going to open the breakout rooms in just a moment. We appreciate you spending our night with us. On behalf of WFAE, thank you. And again, we hope to see you very, very soon.